What's going on? It's Kyle from K Capital. It's about 5 o'clock on the 5th of July. First and foremost, happy 4th of July to everyone in the United States. Hopefully, having a great weekend. It's pretty beautiful up here in the Northeast. It's been about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks since our last video. We had some bad weather up here in these parts. So, unfortunately, I didn't really have the time to do a video. I was really focused just on the alerts and keeping the website up to date. But tonight I want to go through a few things. The first is going to be our open alerts, just to kind of take us through where we're at. As I've alluded to a few times over the past couple of weeks, the market is hitting some resistance after rallying the past couple of quarters. If you look at the Dow, the S&P, the Russell, or the NASDAQ, we've pulled back significantly over the past probably week or two. Obviously, we're going to be more on the bearish side and more cautious with our alerts. And in times like these, just because we want to play to the overall market and not really force any trades. So keep that in the back of your minds as we're kind of going through these alerts. Right now we have 7 swing trades and 1 long-term trade. And I'll plan on going through all of those tonight. So first and foremost, COVS, we are currently up 2% in this guy. Personally, I love the chart here. I think this is something that, now that we've kind of broken this level here on really high volume last week, I think this is something that hopefully trades sideways for a couple days. And this level highlighted in blue now serves as really support, which, as you can see, it did after we broke out. It pulled back here and basically traded across this level for 2 days. So ideally, I would want to see that either continue sideways or continue up, to our $3.50 or $4 target. I think we're going to enter some GTC or good to cancel sell orders just to lock in some of the profit taking. I know in GERN, I think shot up to 19%, and we should have probably had a sell order in there to lock in at least half the shares at that gain. But obviously that's something that, I'll get to in a minute. But stay tuned for specific orders for all of these positions to where we might sell some of at least half of our position and let the other half ride if we hit a 20% target. But again, I'll highlight that in our blog post tonight or the email tonight. So COVS looks good. I think this will trade sideways and, like I said, continue to 350 to 4. Working backwards, CRIS or CRIS. This was one that we entered twice already, and we closed for I think a 3 and 6% loss, little prematurely. What I mean by that is, I sold in this bearish candle here, thinking that this was going to break down. On the flip side, we had really significant volume come through here. We're up 15.5 million shares on this day, which is about 15 times the normal average, and we rallied since then. So as long as this trend line holds, I think this will be one that might take a little time, but I think we see $4 to $4.50-ish, in the next couple weeks. Maybe that's a week or 2 weeks, but I think this should be a good swing as long as this level holds. Right now, we're pretty much flat in this position. I think we actually got in at 318 on the second alert. So we're going to be patient with that and see what happens here in the next couple weeks. ACLS is another we're actually flat in. Similar to Chris, this is one that I think is making a pretty decent, trend line in terms of it's really following this pattern pretty nicely. We had some bearish movement over the last week, which just really traded down with the overall market. I think Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday this traded down, but then it really bounced back at the end of the week and closed pretty strong with some decent volume, about 1.03 million versus an average of 750K. So I think this should be one that, as long as the trend really holds on high volume, we're probably going to continue to hold this. I wouldn't be surprised if this tests 330 and then breaks out to 350, where we'll probably lock in a decent amount of that gain. So stay tuned with this. It's another one where we're pretty much flat in since our alert price. CDE is one where we're unfortunately down 10%, but the one thing that caught my eye is the fact that if you look at this, this trend line is pretty strong. And I wish I shorted more often than I do. But if you rode this channel all the way back to early March, and you shorted at the top and bought at the bottom, obviously you'd be making serious money in this. Because this has really moved $1 to $1.50 each time this is traded in this channel. What's interesting is that the channel is slowly kind of getting shorter and shorter each time, which historically, every time I see a position like this, eventually what happens is it's going to bounce off of this bottom trend line. It's going to test the top, pull back, and then really shoot forward and break out of this horizontal resistance. So right now we're down 10%, but I think this will be a good time to potentially add to this position. If history is going to repeat itself, which I don't see any reason it wouldn't, then this would be a pretty ideal time to add. If you're not in this position yet, I probably would be a buyer here. Again, take that with a grain of salt, do your own due diligence. If I issue an alert, obviously I'm buying it, but if you're not in this position, it might be something to get into a good price here at 548. So take a look at that for Monday. Next is GERN. So we're currently up 2% here. This broke out Thursday of last week really strong here in this candle, but then it kind of sold off. And what I think that was there's been a lot of buyers in this level, all the way from 350 to 370 over the last probably 2 or 3 months. And I think when they saw that breakout, they said, okay, let's just cut our losses or take this gain as it really just kind of fell into our lap. Let's sell the position and get out. We should have sold half of our position here, but I was focused on the other alerts and really didn't take the profit. Going forward, as long as this level continues to hold, or at least at being very conservative, this level holds, we're going to continue to hold this position. What I think will happen is this will continue to bounce in between this channel and eventually pop up to $5. I think the price targets for this are in the 6 to 650 range. I'll have to double check that, but this is, I think, a nice technical setup for us that hopefully we get back up to a 19 to 20% profit. We'll lock in some of that gain, close half the shares or 3/4 of the shares. But stay tuned with this guy. Again, we're up 2%, so I'll take that for the time being. Next is TTMI, which I'm really not concerned with this, but it's something that's kind of bothering me because I really don't understand what's going on. It started trading in this channel, which was really nice, and then it broke out. And we entered, I think, right around this level, I think 998 to 990 is where we got in. We're pretty much flat in this. And then ever since this breakout, it's just been really pulling back on really low volume ever since then. So what I'm going to do is just continue to hold this. It's not something that I think is too much of a concern. If this level breaks down to probably, let's say, 950 to 970, then I'll probably exit the position. But the thing that's kind of intriguing about this is that this high level of volume here back on the 9th of June, was pretty significant. And the last time it did that was all the way back after the first quarter or the year-end earnings call back in February. It had a big spike and then it rallied all the way back, to 11. So I think with this big spike, I think, again, this pullback is really just profit-taking. Then I think eventually we'll trade sideways and back up to 11. So more to come on this. Again, we're flat, so there's nothing really to worry about yet in this puppy. RMBS is the last one of our swings, and we're currently, I think, plus 3% on average. So the one level I'm watching here and have been, and I know I've talked about this in the past, is going to be the breakout candle here. And really what I want to see is this hold. And what I mean by that is you can go all the way back to the breakout, the high and the low. The low held at 350, and then it took off. So now what I'm expecting is the high, or this part of the breakout band, to hold and trade sideways maybe for a day or two and then continue back up to 15 or 16. The one thing that we have to be cautious with is that we have earnings coming up in the next 2 weeks. So I don't really want to hold through that. We'll see how it trades going up into that. Hopefully there's a rally into the earnings call, and then we can sell right before that. But we're plus 3% in this, so it's something that I think we're going to continue to hold. There's no really reason to sell here unless we have a really, really bearish day in the beginning of this week coming up. Finally is our good old friend, Sandridge. So this is a long-term play. I've definitely spoken to a few of you guys about this position. It's something that obviously we're down significantly in. But what caught my eye, and I just actually found this yesterday, is that there's been a decent amount of insider trading for this. And so what you're looking at here is a SEC.gov feeder site to where insidertrading.org will give you insider trades, whether it's buying, selling, block trades, what have you. And more or less on the 1st of July, we had a very large amount of officers and directors, the CEO specifically, buying up some of the shares. They all bought in around the 83 cent mark. Now it's not huge dollars. I mean, granted, 53,000 is still a decent amount of money, but I mean, in total, he has 1.3 million shares, so he added a good size portion to his overall position. But the takeaway really is that they're buys. So obviously, they have some confidence in the overall stock over the long term. They have liquidity. They just closed some of the largest, I think, uh, bond offerings they've had over the past couple quarters. So I don't think liquidity is really an issue. And if you do some more fundamental analysis on here, their first maturity of their debt is not until 2020. So they have a decent amount of time before they really are going to put their feet to the fire in terms of what they have to pay out to bondholders. So I'm thinking of averaging down Monday and Tuesday at these prices. I think if we average right around 76 cents where it's at now, that would take I think our average to around 130 to 135. So stay tuned for this. Again, this is a fundamental play. It's a long-term play. It's not something that obviously is my bread and butter. So take that with a grain of salt. Talk to your financial advisors, and obviously do your own due diligence. But nonetheless, I think this speaks kind of volumes to what the people running this company think about the company, and hopefully they know more about it than we do. So stay tuned for an alert. And that guy, again, that's SD. And obviously, if you have any questions, please shoot me an email. I'm happy to respond. But obviously, talk to a financial advisor. Seek out other information. But stay tuned. I think our positions here are pretty solid. I'm going to start running some scans for tonight to see what other opportunities are out there. But I think we're set up in a good position right now. So if you have any questions, please shoot me an email.